In the abstract, yes. In reality, what you're describing does not exist in the UC system.
Okay, so Justice Thomas got it wrong. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. I think you're mixing apples and oranges.
Well,
So I can't really answer your question.
You can answer my question and say, yes, they are now illegal. That is what Justice Thomas praised in terms of race-neutral policies, which include preferences for low-income applicants, first-generation students, things like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to America First. Today we're diving deep into yet another disgraceful display from the radical left, this time featuring none other than Adam Schiff. Before we get started, make sure to smash that like button if you believe in putting America first, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content exposing the left's anti-American agenda. Also, if you want to support real patriotic content and help us keep fighting the good fight, head over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/AmericaFirst, where you can support us for as low as $5 a month. Every dollar helps us continue bringing you the truth that the mainstream media won't tell you. Now, what we just witnessed in this congressional hearing is absolutely infuriating, but sadly not surprising. Here we have Adam Schiff, the same man who spent years lying to the American people about Russian collusion, the same man who orchestrated sham impeachment proceedings, now attacking the Department of Justice for simply doing its job and investigating actual discrimination at the University of California.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Dillon, you recently announced that DOJ was launching an investigation into the University of California over its UC 2030 capacity plan, which notes that future growth of faculty and students should result in campus populations that better reflect and tap the talent of underrepresented populations who represent the majority of Californians. In the SFFA versus Harvard opinion, the Supreme Court held that nothing in this opinion should be construed as prohibiting universities from considering an applicant's discussion of how race affected his or her life, be it through discrimination, inspiration, or otherwise, allowing universities to continue assessing students' experience with race on an individualized basis. In that opinion, in his concurrence, Justice Thomas praised the University of California for achieving diversity through race-neutral policies, including preferences for low-income applicants and first-generation students, and recruiting efforts targeted at areas with substantial populations of people of color. Are the race-neutral policies like those used by University of California, which Justice Thomas explicitly praised in that opinion, now considered by you to be illegal DEI?
Well, Senator, first of all, the investigation that we've opened is an investigation, and it's an investigation into the hiring policies of the University of California system, not the admissions policies. That said, I have absolutely seen abuses in the admissions policies in using race as a crude proxy for discrimination. That's not the question I asked you.
Are the race-neutral policies praised by Justice Thomas now considered by you to be illegal DEI?
I think you're mixing apples and oranges.
Well,
so I can't really answer your question.
You can answer my question and say, yes, they are now illegal. That is what Justice Thomas praised in terms of race-neutral policies, which include preferences for low-income applicants, first-generation students, things like that. Are you now saying that what Justice Thomas praised is now illegal in your view?
Senator, there's a difference between what you see on paper and what you see in reality, and I reject your premise.
I'm not asking you about particular.
I reject your premise that how California describes its
practice.
admissions
I'm asking
practices
you about whether
reality.
you subscribe to the Supreme Court's opinion or whether you disagree with Justice Thomas' concurrence. You can answer that question, can't you?
In the abstract, yes. In reality, what you're describing does not exist in the UC system.
Okay, so Justice Thomas got it wrong. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that.
Well, you are saying that because he was praising the policies of the University of California. You seem to be saying now that any university that gives a preference to low-income applicants is engaged in illegal DEI, or if they put a focus on first-generation students, that's somehow impermissible. After all the years of criticism of cancel culture, you seem to want to cancel any institution that has views that you disagree with. In answer to the questions about law firms, you want to cancel law firms because they take on unpopular clients to you, to the administration. That is, if a firm represents someone with an adverse interest to the administration, which is their First Amendment right to do, and I would also say their duty to do, you would cancel them. You would cancel universities like Harvard or the University of Virginia that take positions and exercise their First Amendment rights contrary to what you think the administration wants to see. You would cancel the Associated Press for not using the ridiculous nomenclature of the Gulf of America. You're canceling now the Wall Street Journal because the Wall Street Journal had the audacity to publish an article about Trump's connections to Jeffrey Epstein. So this is what's going on in this administration. You've devastated the Civil Rights Division. Hundreds of attorneys, 368, have departed since January of this year. There's been a mass exodus from the Civil Rights Department. It is just a shell of what it used to be. They're being canceled. They're being canceled by you, by the department. Anyone that stands up to this president is at risk of being canceled. And I think what you're doing to use the sledgehammer of federal funding with universities to try to coerce them to accepting your right-wing agenda is disgraceful. And using that cudgel will have far-reaching implications, attacking research done by universities, academic independence done by universities. It will establish a dangerous precedent that can be abused by a president of any party, and we should recognize that on a bipartisan basis, even though it does not appear that we do. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Let me break down what's really happening here, because the corrupt media won't give you the full story. The DOJ has launched an investigation into UC's 2030 capacity plan, which explicitly states that future growth should result in campus populations that better reflect and tap the talent of underrepresented populations. Now, on the surface, that might sound reasonable to some people, but let's be honest about what this really means. This is code for racial discrimination against qualified students, particularly Asian Americans and white students, who are being denied opportunities based solely on the color of their skin. The Supreme Court made it crystal clear in the Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard case that race-based admissions are unconstitutional. They ruled that universities cannot use race as a factor in admissions decisions, period. Yet here we have the University of California system apparently continuing to operate under policies that prioritize racial demographics over merit and qualifications. This is exactly the kind of illegal discrimination that the DOJ should be investigating. But listen to how Schiff responds when confronted with this basic constitutional principle. Instead of addressing the actual issue, which is potential violations of civil rights law, he tries to twist the conversation into some bizarre attack on the administration. He claims that investigating illegal racial discrimination is somehow an attack on free speech and academic freedom. This is the classic leftist playbook. When you can't defend your position on the merits, cry victim, and claim your opponents are the real authoritarians. What's particularly galling is Schiff's attempt to use Justice Thomas's concurrence in the Harvard case to defend UC's policies. Justice Thomas specifically praised race-neutral policies like preferences for low-income students and first-generation college students. These are legitimate factors that universities can consider because they're based on socioeconomic circumstances, not racial identity. But the UC system isn't just implementing race-neutral policies. They're explicitly stating that they want campus populations to reflect certain racial demographics. That's not race-neutral, that's racial balancing, and it's exactly what the Supreme Court prohibited. The DOJ official in this hearing makes an excellent point when he distinguishes between what's written on paper and what happens in reality. Universities have become masters at using coded language to continue their discriminatory practices while claiming they're following the law. They'll say they're implementing race-neutral policies while simultaneously using those policies as proxies for race. This is why federal investigations are necessary to examine not just the written policies, but how they're actually being implemented. Schiff then goes completely off the rails with his accusations about cancel culture. This is rich coming from a party that has spent the last decade systematically canceling conservatives from every major institution in America. We've seen conservative speakers banned from college campuses, conservative employees fired from tech companies, and conservative voices silenced on social media platforms. But now, when the DOJ investigates potential civil rights violations, suddenly Schiff is concerned about institutional independence. His attacks on law firms representing clients with interests adverse to the administration are particularly hypocritical. Where was this concern when the Obama administration was targeting conservative organizations through the IRS? Where was this concern when Biden's DOJ was targeting parents at school board meetings as domestic terrorists? The left only cares about institutional independence when it serves their political agenda. The claim about attorneys leaving the Civil Rights Division is also misleading. What Schiff won't tell you is that many of these attorneys were hired during the previous administration specifically to advance radical leftist interpretations of civil rights law that go far beyond what Congress intended. These weren't career civil servants dedicated to equal justice under law. These were political activists using government positions to advance their ideological agenda. The fact that they're leaving is actually a good thing for the integrity of the Justice Department. Let's talk about what real civil rights enforcement looks like. It means ensuring that all Americans, regardless of their race, are treated equally under the law. It means investigating when universities discriminate against Asian American students because they perform too well academically. It means examining when employers implement hiring quotas that exclude qualified candidates based on their skin color. It means protecting the constitutional rights of all Americans, not just the groups that the left considers politically favorable. The University of California system has a long history of trying to circumvent legal restrictions on racial preferences. After California voters passed Proposition 209 in 1996, which prohibited racial preferences in public education and employment, UC tried multiple workarounds to continue discriminating. They implemented holistic admissions processes that were really just ways to continue considering race indirectly. They changed their standardized testing requirements to make it easier to admit students from certain racial groups. Every time the law closed one loophole, they found another. This is why federal oversight is so important. State institutions that are determined to discriminate will always find creative ways to do so unless there's serious federal enforcement. The DOJ's investigation into UC's hiring practices is exactly the kind of enforcement action that's needed to ensure compliance with constitutional principles. Schiff's reference to the Gulf of America and the Wall Street Journal shows just how unhinged his thinking has become. The idea that changing the name of a body of water or criticizing media coverage somehow constitutes cancellation is absurd. These are policy decisions and political commentary, not systematic efforts to destroy people's livelihoods or silence opposing viewpoints. The fact that Schiff can't distinguish between legitimate government actions and actual cancel culture shows how distorted his worldview has become. What we're really seeing here is the left's panic as their stranglehold on American institutions begins to weaken. For decades, they've used universities, government agencies, and major corporations to advance their radical agenda while claiming to be defenders of civil rights and academic freedom. Now that there's finally an administration willing to enforce the law equally and investigate actual discrimination, they're crying foul. The truth is that the policies Schiff is defending aren't about diversity or inclusion. They're about power and control. The left uses racial preferences and DEI initiatives as tools to maintain their dominance over American institutions. They've created a system where ideological conformity is rewarded and dissent is punished, all under the guise of promoting equality. Real equality means judging people by their character and qualifications, not their skin color or ethnic background. It means creating systems that give everyone a fair chance to succeed based on their merit and effort. It means rejecting the poisonous ideology that divides Americans into racial categories and pits them against each other. The DOJ's investigation into UC represents a return to these fundamental principles. Instead of allowing universities to continue discriminating with impunity, the federal government is finally holding them accountable to the Constitution and federal civil rights law. This is what justice looks like, even if Adam Schiff and his leftist allies don't like it. We need to understand that this fight is about much more than college admissions or hiring practices. It's about whether America will remain a nation where individuals are judged by their merit and character, or whether we'll become a country where your race determines your opportunities. It's about whether our institutions will serve all Americans equally or whether they'll continue to be captured by radical ideologues who want to fundamentally transform our society. The left's reaction to this investigation tells us everything we need to know about their true priorities. They're not interested in equal treatment under the law. They're not concerned about the Asian American students who are being discriminated against by university admissions policies. They're not worried about the qualified job candidates who are being passed over because of their race. All they care about is maintaining their power and advancing their political agenda, even if it means violating the constitutional rights of American citizens. This is why it's so important for patriots to stay engaged and hold our elected officials accountable. We can't allow the left to continue weaponizing our institutions against the American people. We need leaders who will enforce the law fairly and protect the rights of all citizens, not just the politically favored groups. The University of California investigation is just the beginning. There are countless other institutions across the country that have been engaging in similar discriminatory practices under the guise of diversity initiatives. From Fortune 500 companies implementing racial hiring quotas to medical schools lowering standards for certain racial groups, the scope of institutionalized discrimination in America is staggering. But we're finally seeing some pushback. The Supreme Court's decision in the Harvard case was a crucial first step, and federal investigations like the one into UC are the necessary follow-up to ensure compliance. We're also seeing brave individuals filing lawsuits to challenge discriminatory practices in their own workplaces and educational institutions. This is what the resistance to woke ideology looks like. It's not about suppressing anyone's rights or silencing legitimate voices. It's about ensuring that our laws and institutions treat all Americans equally, regardless of their political beliefs or demographic characteristics. It's about restoring the principles of merit and equal opportunity that made America great in the first place. Schiff and his allies can scream and cry all they want about cancel culture and authoritarianism, but the American people see through their hypocrisy. We know that the real threat to our democracy comes from the left's systematic capture of our institutions and their use of those institutions to advance their radical agenda. The DOJ's investigation into the University of California is a victory for equal justice under law. It's a victory for the Asian American students who have been discriminated against by UC's admissions policies. It's a victory for all Americans who believe that our institutions should serve everyone equally, not just the politically connected. We need to support these efforts and demand more of them. Every university, every government agency, every major corporation that engages in racial discrimination should face similar scrutiny. We need to root out the ideology of racial preferences wherever it exists and replace it with genuine equality of opportunity. This fight isn't going to be easy. The left has spent decades embedding their ideology in our institutions, and they won't give up without a fight. They'll continue to use their media allies to attack anyone who challenges their agenda. They'll continue to claim that enforcing constitutional principles is somehow discriminatory or authoritarian. But we can't be intimidated by their tactics. We have the Constitution, the law, and the moral high ground on our side. Most importantly, we have the American people who understand that true equality means treating everyone fairly regardless of their background. So let's keep fighting, patriots. Let's support investigations like the one into UC. Let's demand that our institutions return to the principles of merit and equal opportunity. And let's never let dishonest politicians like Schiff gaslight us into thinking that enforcing civil rights law is somehow a violation of civil rights. That's all for today's video, patriots. If you found this analysis helpful, make sure to give a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. And don't forget to subscribe to America First for more content that puts American values and American citizens first. Remember, you can also support our work by visiting our Patreon page at patreon.com/America First, where your contribution of just $5 a month helps us continue fighting for truth and justice. Until next time, keep putting America first.